Have you got snow up there, Ken?
Certainly have, yeah, plenty of it.
Right, I'm just opening up the Facebook page now, and then I'll be with you 1 second.
Okay.
The Wonder Bags arrived, so thank you for that.
Oh, that's great. Got plenty more.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah. Yep, I'm just sorting out the Facebook Live. Yep.
Does a chief executive officer sound as if I'm paid?
Well, we can touch on that. We can touch on that subject as well, isn't it? About sort of people's people's perceptions of how charities work and stuff. I think is an important one. So.
Mm. I forgot about this one as well. See this one here?
Yeah.
I got a Timberland scholarship in 2005. It was called Water, Wood, Wind and Wonderment. How's that for my soundbite?
Absolutely, and that's a great way to kick us off. So listen, Ken, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I know we've had many conversations, and you visited us down here in Leicester, and we can talk about why you came to visit, etc. But just tell us, and for the people that are kind of listening and the recording that I'm doing here, just a little bit about what Africa's Gift is today.
Okay. Well, in this current pandemic, it's somewhat thwarted because what we do is we take people from the first world, and we take them along on a journey to actually go and work with community members in Central, Eastern, and Southern Africa. In so doing, making people look at what their priorities are in life and what are people's priorities. So we actually go and work on projects which are very meaningful to the community members that host us, but really do in the end shake up our perceptions of what life's all about. And that's why I call it Africa's Gift, because you can go and give, and you can go and give materially. But actually, if you open yourself up and you're receptive to truly understanding and empathizing with a community member, then actually you will receive a gift from Africa, and that will be an overwhelming sense of humanity, of priority, and of community. And that's something which is sadly lacking in many parts of the world. And dare I say it, I can only see that those community breakdowns, growing as things unshake from COVID. So yeah, and it's our work is very much around education, and it's about education for sustainable development. And it's because actually, when you go to the poorest parts of the world, you're met by education which is almost not fit for purpose. And it's certainly very challenging. I've seen pockets of real excellence in my life, but actually, for the most part, it is a broken educational system which is not really fit for purpose. So actually, educating for the future and educating for young people who can be self-reliant without destroying the natural beauty around them is something that that I've devoted the last 20 years of my life to. Um, so yeah, and John, that comes from a backdrop of a very different world, of one of adventure and exploration and challenge and personal development of young people. And when I did all of that stuff, it was massively exciting. It was helpful to the youngsters that I took along on that journey for their personal growth, but actually very little in it for the community members that we were passing through, the communities that we were trundling along by with our big double mountaineering boots and our 100-pound rucksacks and our 1,000-pound cameras, you know.
So going back to your early days, the heady days of sort of a newly qualified geography teacher, for example, you know what I mean? You've got all this experience of, like, British Schools Expeditionary Society expeditions, near-death experiences, all sorts of stuff. Your approach towards outdoor education, and here you are as this young, enthusiastic, dare I say it, not much more hair than you've got now, because you've done quite well, so that's all right. So you've managed to retain most of it. And there you are, about to work in sort of a working class area with this group of young people that you're about to take on this geography journey, and you've got all these dreams and aspirations and stuff. Kind of obviously still early days yet before you've taken any of them overseas and stuff. What do you think was, were you naive when you look back now, or are you inspired by your excitement at that time?
Actually, it's I am actually inspired. I'm inspired by actually our dialogue to pen a book, and I've been writing out a few key kind of moments and chapters and so forth. And actually, upon reflection, working with a gnarly old guy in the outdoors in the Peak District who was running the residentials that I would take kids from Rotherham, and they'd never been to the outdoors. They'd never been immersed into that. And multicultural area of Rotherham. Many of the kind of taboos that surrounded going away and staying overnight away from home. I was trying to shatter, and this this old guy said to me when I was relaying some of my hedonistic days of expeditioning and climbing, and he said, look, you studied geology. He said, how old are these rocks here? And I said, kind of 250, 300 million years old. He says, they're going to be here next year then, aren't they? he says, make sure you are.
Yeah.
And actually, that was I've actually heard old Vinny speak to me on occasions where I've actually had that inner rush to be a bit of a nutter, and hold me back. And really, from a very early age of studying geography seriously, I was actually very much into the wild outdoors and less interested in the human interface. But actually, the more and more you get into it, the more and more you see the two are inextricably linked. And the more you see of the developing world, the more potential there is, I believe, to actually be an agent of change, because it's a sad reflection that many people are very very much focused on looking after their own and building up their own little kind of nest egg. And I can remember as a young geographer being really impacted in the early 80s by this notion of contraction and convergence. And it was this Gaia model of Mother Earth, actually, where even in the early 80s, we were seeing that things were not right. And that was, the words climate change were not really bandied about but actually an unhealthy distribution of wealth and power and resources on the planet was abundantly clear. And at that time, there was this notion that actually the North and the West would actually contract its consumption, and actually it would move towards the South in actually helping the poorer countries evolve and develop, their technologies, so that actually they were less harmful to the planet. And how wrong was I? That was so. There was that utopian model that we would move closer together. There would be greater cooperation, and what we've seen is just the exact opposite of that. Um, and as we're interviewing here today, nothing's changed, and I think we were talking about a vaccine apartheid next. It's somewhat discouraging, when you look at the big picture. But all we can do is influence those around us and actually make the changes that we can make. Yeah.
I think one of the things that it inspires me most since I met you, because obviously we've got a mutual contact through Lee Jowett here at Eco Schools in Leicester. I think Tina and I had done something here, like a newsroom for them, and he mentioned this guy who does these shoes for Africa and stuff, different bits and pieces, and you must meet him. And I think we invited you, and you just happened to be coming down, didn't you? And we had a kind of conversation. And I think since that moment, I'd really thought about a part of my life that I'd completely forgotten about, which is, geography and geology A levels, for example. So the early 80s, as you talk there, we're talking 82, 83, 84. Really being interested in the physical side of the geography, sort of the outdoors, and of the geology. Not really interested in the human side per se, if I'm honest. Obviously passed, so 2 A levels, never went to university, went off to, do things with the army and outdoor pursuits and stuff. And so you and I have kind of gone on this journey, and we've now met with you running an NGO and being passionate and taking people on. I've run expeditions and done all sorts of things. And here I am sitting in an archive that covers 100 countries across the global south. And I've ordered a couple of old dodgy textbooks off of eBay. I've rejoined as a fellow of the Royal Geographical Society, which I'd completely forgotten about that I was a fellow of from 1993. And so I've got my magazines coming through now, and obviously I've got a real love for National Geographic. And what I realised was that you'd made me look back. And what I'm sitting in here really is almost an appreciation of geography as well as history. I'd always come at it from history and media and current affairs and stuff. And actually, it really is underlaid, if you like, by geography, and just how important human geography is, that understanding of the world and how it works beyond social media and stuff like that. And I think that's why I've been so inspired to support you in whichever way I can with Africa's Gift. And like I said, thanks for taking the time to come on today. And really want to speak to you now a little bit about the challenges that we have with the pandemic. Now, I'm not just talking about specifically fundraising and on all those issues, and I'm sure we can touch on those, but the fact that this pandemic has affected everybody, and it's affected how funding and support, from the government cutting overseas development money from DFID, cutting DFID, through to people not being able to raise money for charities that are local here because there's no on the street fundraising, and the impact it's having on people that I know across the world of all the 100 countries that I cover, because there is just no funding. I mean, are you quite anxious about the situation?
It has impacted it's actually impacted upon me more than the charity, which is a bizarre situation. In that, you know, I'm a founder of the charity and I'm the chairman of the charity. And I think your piece actually has me as chief executive officer, which is often a paid post. Well, the reality is that I actually pay £5 a month to be a member of this charity. And what we've done over the last decade is we've managed to get some people um, to sign up to a monthly direct debit, become a member. We inform them with newsletters and so forth to keep them up to speed. And so that trickle funding has actually, you know, been very helpful. And what we have done is we've put um, uh, campaigns out during the depths of COVID to respond to need in our host communities. And and the way that you know, so you mentioned Lee earlier. Lee's been to Malaya in this little village in Lesotho. He's also been to Uganda, where two of the projects that we're working on, you know. And so it's people like Lee and that have actually uh, been to a location. They know it, they can feel it, and so when you put a request out for some support, because you know, I did so just last week. There are 20 families who are extremely vulnerable, um, and you know, people then just chip in, and that money goes. But you know, personally, you know, it is tough because the my modus operandi for enumeration is to actually work with the groups and facilitate the groups when they go. And of course, there's no overseas travel. Um, uh, you know, since February, my last group, and I was booked up, and I'm still got people who are saying, when can we go next? When can we go next? But that doesn't look like anytime soon to the south of Africa. So you know, that is you know, of course, all of um, the 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 school events that I would do ordinarily. I would go into schools. I would do talks. I do illustrated talks with my images, um, and that would be a form of actually fundraising for myself and for the charity, and that's stopped right now. And it might be that that's something that going forward can be done from home, but at the moment that's dried up too. And of course all the physical events just are just not happening. So yeah, and you know, and I suppose I do need to get smart, and I've been looking at how best we can move forward through a social media uh, profile, because the big charities have got this off to a fine art, and of course they're paying people quite a lot of money to do this 24/7. Us little guys, were
I don't know if you can hear me, Ken. I can still hear you. I think you've gone on to mute again. If you could just hit your mute thing. That's it. That should be it. Yeah, I can't hear you. So I think we've obviously got a connection issue. There we go.
Is that any better?
Yep, you're back again. That's good.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean,
Okay. So
just looking back to back to those school days and stuff like that, because obviously you've taken Ken Dunn school days. There you go. There's the section in your book for you. I mean, so that's quite good and that's catchy. People are like that. What kind of impact do you think you've had on the sort of young people that you've taken, like you said, from these areas and stuff? I mean, are you still in touch with any of them? Do they kind of talk to you about that? Have you kind of educated any of their children and taken them?
Yeah, I mean that's the nature. I mean, the nature of the beast is the very first expedition to Lesotho was from an ex-coal mining village called Royston and Barnsley, and I took 16 youngsters with a doctor and a nurse, another teacher, and a couple of teaching assistants along on that first visit, and this was in 2003, and it was to prove, hugely impactful on everyone. Um, and crazy anecdotes of us, having a lot of communication, me having a lot of communication with the community before we went, so that when we went there, all our energies were actually being used to the max. And I'd done some weird and wonderful things with renewable energy. I'd actually done a show garden at Hampton Court, showcasing wind and solar power. So this was in the early noughties, so before these were mainstream things. And I said, look, to Lesotho, if we got some wind and solar, could we bring standalone electricity to the secondary school? Would that be of benefit? And of course, we did that. That was beyond the remit of school children. So we actually, contracted that out to South African engineers to erect and so forth. But while we were there, we were asked to work alongside the community, constructing a community reservoir. And this is just like a municipal swimming pool in size, not a massive kind of Lady Bower reservoir or anything. It's just a small thing. And but we were there with 3 generations of community members. And this grandmother was putting us to shame using this pickaxe. We were there, we thought we were all fit and healthy, and she would be the first one wielding it and the last one wielding it during the day. The students, to a person, actually were absolutely fully committed. And I can picture this scene. We're about 5,000 feet up in the mountains. We're on a hillside of basaltic rocks, or lava, and we're whacking into it with a pickaxe. And I'm saying, look, I'm forcing my students to take water breaks and say, look, you're going to burn yourself out. Just manage it. No, I'm all right. I'm all right, Mr. Dunn. I'm all right, Mr. and we were whacking into this, and then there were 2 American tourists came by on a horse, and you could see the outline of what we were excavating. And here we are in the middle of Lesotho, in the middle of nowhere, and these American tourists shouted over, "Are you guys building a pool?" In terms of where people are on the wavelength. And of course we were building a reservoir. But actually, members of that very same group in 2003 then came back in 2018. 15 years later, they led a girl guide group, 2 of the young ladies that were 15 at the time. So they came back to see the development of the project, and that reservoir was in all its glory, full of water, surrounded by a fenced community garden, which was producing food for a community, because water is life, and it's those projects, and we went. It was really interesting. 15 years is quite a nice time to be able to see how a 15 centimeter tree sapling has grown. And 15 years later, these little 15 to 6 inches of tree saplings were whacking great trees that they had planted way back then, and have been nurtured by the community through our kind of Trees for Africa campaign since then. So I've been fortunate to actually have taken youngsters who I know this work has impacted upon. And it's always difficult to quantify as a teacher because you never get to see the end product. It's this constant conveyor belt of people coming through. But actually, for those youngsters to come back, and one of them come back and say, "Can I do my dissertation on it?" Another one, "Can I do my master's on it?" This work, and what I then went to to offer this work to primary schools also, and I actually took a Catholic primary school from Scunthorpe, and because of the nature of the age of the youngsters, one parent accompanied the year 6 or year 5 student, and they went out, they had the experience, they came back, we related back to their family, and then the next time the other parent and the other child came out. And so the next time I went back and I said, well, I'm going to do a visit just for retirees now. And so the grandmother of the family then came out. So I'd got 3 generations and all 5 of that family to go on 3 separate visits to experience the same place, but of course slightly different dynamics. But it is impactful for sure.
I mean, when you look back now, obviously you said you're talking about, it's hard to quantify at the time, isn't it? Because obviously you've got these young people, there's a turnover, you never really know whether you're impacts people. Even teaching at the university now, it's the same for me. There's a couple of people I'd like to keep an eye on whether they'd go on and do what they're going to do. Natural inquisitiveness, I think. But from your perspective, what you know about education at the moment, or what you're aware of in the sector, is the system, the education system, flexible enough to allow this kind of deeper learning that we really need, the kind of the meaningful understanding? We're not getting it from the mainstream media, are we, about anything or anybody in the world? So really, it's only when you're working with young people, like the work that Tina and I do in primary schools and secondary schools, and to an extent what I'm doing at the university and Leicester College, you're trying to give people awareness and understanding and opportunities to get involved in things and explore. I mean, but from your perspective, are we missing a trick? Are we still too busy focusing on things that aren't important about the world, and we're missing history and geography and stuff? I'm expecting you to say more than yes. Okay, so
I think you're pushing at an open door there, and I'm a passionate advocate for geography in the curriculum, and actually as something that needs to be, the people need to have an awareness of, for the broader learning in life. And actually, you learn an awful lot about yourself, when you actually go on structured visits. There's a lot of stuff there about travel per se, and yes, for sure, you learn about yourself. But actually, just going and doing your gap year, bumming around Australia or whatever, I think there's much more that could be done in that regard. And actually, some of the structured work that we do with schools and universities and colleges, is because we've got courageous school leaders who genuinely get what education is truly about, and have got the privilege. And here is the other thing, because some people do have that, but just don't have the personnel to actually front up and lead on this, because it is about capacity. Schools are incredibly complex. Having been a deputy head, in a secondary school, I know how complex it is. I know how fraught management decisions are, and how brutal they have to be in terms of releasing personnel and so forth. So you've got a finite workforce and amount of income coming in, unless you're really creative elsewhere, and therefore you're often constrained. But actually, I've been immensely privileged to work with some amazing schools and universities that have got visionary thinkers who see a way through some of these obstacles. And actually, when those people come back, and I'm invited to be part of the feedback session. Um, that is a very special moment, because there you get it from the horse's mouth. You can, and actually, you can see development happening in that young person right in front of your eyes.
Mm.
You can see the confidence grow from someone who was, never dreamt of actually doing something like this before. And I'm sure you've seen this before, John, when people are out of their working environments, those that you think are going to be great sometimes just go into the shell, and those that are the rough diamonds actually shine the brightest. And this is the thing that I've witnessed year after year after year. And you nurture all of those young people to um, to come and be the best possible version of themselves. And what I would say about this actually is that it's not this learning is not just restricted to to the young, but actually I work with the University of the Third Age, and I take older community members. And I remember vividly this meal where we were in the lodge. We'd had an immense day, and this guy tapped his glass with his spoon. He stood up and he said, "I'd just like to raise a glass, and I'd just like to say that today has been the most powerful day of my life. I'm 69 years old. I'm a former senior civil servant, and today's been the most powerful day of my life." And when something like that happens, that's when the
Mm.
goosebumps,
Yeah. Yeah.
start.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I mean, we're talking, we've spoke schools, you spoke University of the Third Age, and then kind of that bit in the middle, you've mentioned kind of touched on gap year and stuff, encouraging young people to go off and explore the world and, kind of make those mistakes and, rough and tumble and stuff. And of
Mm,
course, you did the British Schools Expeditionary Society. I kind of got involved in Operation Raleigh, went off to New Zealand and did various other bits and pieces. So I think, we've experienced, what it is, that kind of forced hardship, having to make those decisions, making decisions when you're wet and cold. You know what I mean? I
mm,
think it's
mm.
it's that stuff that you get through resilience as well. It kind of builds that resilience to understanding. And some of the young people that we work with who've come through some incredibly tough situations and complex
Yes.
needs, and what the world's done to them. Well, of course,
Mm,
they end up being survivors. You know what I mean? And that's really, we've lost that, haven't we? As a
yes.
society, we're quite soft. We're used to doing things a certain way. We need our creature comforts. I mean, there's some people I talk to, you'd think they were in Syria the way they talk about lockdown. You know what I mean? For God's
Yes.
sake,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
been
Yes.
mildly inconvenienced, you've still got electricity and food, and you can still go out for half an hour to exercise without being shot. So get
Yes.
get get us get it into perspective.
Sure.
Do you
Sure.
think there's more that we could do? Because really, that's where NCS came from. National Citizen Service was set up
Mm,
by the coalition government after the riots in down in Croydon. Well, of course, the young people that end up going on NCS now are not really the young people that they were encouraging. And most of these young people end up going in something like the army as the only structure they have, because it's the employer that they've got where they are. We've still got those kind of pockets of deprivation in the UK. I mean, do you think something like expeditioning, what you did with BSES and what I did with Raleigh, there's something to say there about learning about the world, that a different kind of service, I guess, national service.
well, I mean, it's interesting where we find ourselves, environmentally, and I think there are lots of opportunities for people to engage on on their doorstep or on the nearest beauty spot to actually start looking after our own spaces. And I think if of course I'm doing this with communities thousands of miles away, but actually there is opportunity for people to actually start start the action closer to home, and actually see if we can't be part of the solution
Mm.
rather than the problem. Um, what I would say is that actually um, the world will come back again. It's probably not going to be the same crazy transport network that we once saw, and that was probably irresponsible the way that we were using international flight. But actually, to come and engage with communities who are the most exposed is something that I would like to see more of, because the poorest people on the planet are the ones that are going to be affected by climate change the most. And those the poorest people are closest to the soil, and closest to the just actually making enough food in a given year to be self-reliant. And actually, the more energies that can go into that, one of the things that I'm working with students from Sheffield Hallam University just this week is a relaunch of our Trees for Africa campaign, to actually get all manner of different trees planted for different reasons. So some of those trees are for fruit, some of them for nuts, some of them are for binding soil together to prevent the soils from being washed away. Others are actually for nitrogen fixing the soil so that we can have some agroforestry. We can plant underneath those trees in fertile soils. Others are habitat restoration. Others are medicinal planting. So we're actually taking trees, this is in Uganda, we're taking trees that the tribal elders know are of actually got very strong medicinal properties, and we're actually planting a pocket pharmacy there. So these are practical things that people can actually sign up for now, and then actually come and walk the talk when the world becomes safe again. But actually, I agree with you, and actually my father speaks to me from his from his cloud up there, and said, self-pity is the rock you perish on. And if you just sit and wallow in self-pity, then you're gonna go on a downward spiral. You actually have to be motivated to be the change agent,
Well, listen, listen, mate. The reason I enjoy talking to you, and anybody that's watching this that knows me reasonably well will go, "Oh, that's why John likes talking to him." Okay, so that's great. It's like talking into a mirror. I do like that. That's brilliant. It's nice when you come across someone that you feel like a bit of a kindred spirit with. So, thank you for igniting in me some enthusiasm and some areas that had motivated me that I'd forgotten about as well. Okay. Now, obviously, we're going to be working on a new website for you, which I'm absolutely delighted to be able to do. You're going through quite an extensive photography collection at the moment, trying to find some stuff that we can start sharing more with your Instagram account, and obviously some exciting plans for opportunities for people to buy, like, photography books, hopefully, and some signed prints and those kind of things that we can help you with. I mean, are you enjoying the experience of going through some of that archive in lockdown?
I am, yeah. I mean, I do need to get a hold of the slides off to either Jessup's or somewhere, to actually digitize those, because a lot of my archive going way back to 81 is on transparencies. But I've got some very strong images that I've been uh, 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 enjoying looking at. Some of it's a bit of a crunch, because I've got about 12 versions of the same picture, all at different sizes. So it's a question of getting all that catalog. But I've got some crackers for sure. Yeah. And actually, and it's interesting, just this notion of starting to draft some words. I've been prompted to start writing a few things out, and getting some dates, and seeing analyzing yourself where those key moments in your life pushed you. Yeah.
And I think it's the people that you meet and things that you forget that people said to you, or like you said, that kind of advice as well. When I look back now, when I was younger, I suddenly realized that, I'd found a letter that I'd written to my gran when I was 14 or 15, just telling her a little bit about school, and that I was going to buy this camera and do this thing, and then set off and make this film about traveling around the world. And then I was going to do some audio recordings to tell their family history. And of course, I'm doing that now for like the Somalian community and the Ugandan Asian community here in Leicester. I did something with the Bangladeshi community the other day, and you just don't realise, I think, that when you look back, there's these kind of points where you meet people. You know, my geography and geology teacher, you know, Mr. Kroom, I can sort of, talk to him now. Mr. Wilson, the human geography teacher, who at the time I probably didn't appreciate as much as I did Mr. Kroom. But when I look back now, I think actually I probably absorbed more from Mr. Wilson in what I do now than with the physical side of it. So I think that's one of those things that's been quite interesting talking to you, particularly today as well, about, now meeting and going on that journey. There's been someone here, Charlotte Stevens, has put on Facebook, who's watching this. She was saying about, can she have the link to your Instagram feed, which I'll put on here now, and also that projects and organisations that help young people, expose them to working in some of these communities and challenging situations, because I think this is how we're going to help our young people of the UK and young people around the world to connect, that better understanding. We can't rely on the mainstream media anymore to tell us who we should be friends with. We need to be making these connections ourselves and using social media to reach out and doing some of these things. Now, I cannot let you go, Ken, without your favourite subject. Okay, and I'm going to go and grab it now because I didn't drag it close enough to me before I did. Okay, so bear with me just 1 second.
Radio.
So I've grabbed my props. Now I've had 5 of these off of you, haven't I, so far? These wonder bags. They arrive in these wonderful things here. It says, "I am a slow cooker," which I thought sounded like a really good title for both of our books, actually. But there we go. We'll move on with that. When you open it up, it's one of these amazing things called a wonder bag. Okay, and so I was absolutely intrigued by this, and I'll be honest with you, one of the best things about all the films you left behind for me to create you a YouTube channel was looking at some of this marvelous stuff that you put on the internet. So you cook something in one pot, you bring it to the boil, cook it for a little bit, you put it in this bag, put this on the top, pull the drawstring, and it is in fact a slow cooker, and it's saving fuel for the fire being kept boiling all the time. Obviously the water that's not boiling away, because it actually acts as a slow cooker. Now, we tried that out, Tina and I. We cooked the most amazing chili con carne. It does work. And it's interesting to hear the people that I've spoken to about it. I'm speaking to Zinfia at the community shop about how that could help families, that are, women escaping domestic violence situations where they've got something straight away. There's people that are kind of fuel poverty, electricity, not being able to afford that. There's that. And then Haiti as well. So talking to the Andrew Green Foundation about how they could use that at the school. And it is just an absolutely fantastic concept. And I know you've been doing some amazing things with this, haven't you, for the communities there in Lesotho and stuff like that. I mean, from your point of view, is it that groundbreaking? Do you think it really is one of those amazing things that we find?
It is, because it's practical action. It is the most appropriate bit of kit, because you'll know that before I encountered the wonder bag, before the wonder bag was invented, I was actually working on the issue of smoke inhalation, which is really devastating to health in the poorest parts of the world. And I was working on this clean burn cooking stove, which was technically very great, but actually it had mechanical issues. It had maintenance issues. And then just when I was getting a little despondent, along came this cooking bag invented by an African lady for African ladies. And Sarah Collins, the inventor, is an amazing individual. I immediately made contact with her, told her of my journey, and she invited me to meet, and we've gone on from there fantastically. And I can go and I can introduce this cooking book into a community that do not know it exists, and that community is locked into, and the words I'd use, they're locked into this wholly consumptive drudgery, this wholly consumptive process of cutting wood, carrying wood, harvesting water, carrying water, and then cooking burning that wood and boiling that water away for 4 hours unnecessarily when you've got this bag. And it's a foam-filled bag. It's got no right to be as impactful.
Yeah, it's got no right at all. No right at all. Yeah.
Absolutely not. It's just a puffy bag full of foam, and yet it is utterly transformative. And the privilege that I had, very recently is that taking university master students from Sheffield Hallam University to go and measure its impact. So the visit that I took with Hallam was twofold. It was to go and introduce this to communities that had not received it thus far, but it was then also to assess its impact in communities that had actually been on this journey. And I wanted the questionnaire to be a bit fluffy and soft at the front before we got into the data collection. And so I had an open general question, a warm-up question. How is the Wonder Bag for you? And that one question had most of the master's students in tears of joy, because you would go in and you would ask that question, how is the Wonder Bag for you? And a lady would look at you in through your eyes into your soul. She would say, thank you for giving me my life back. Before the Wonder Bag, my life was just XYZ, water, wood, smoke. I've now got this bag. I can now make crafts. Have a look at the crafts. We look at the crafts, we buy the crafts. There is a further element of self-reliance. And this is the key thing. It is about actually giving more self-reliance to women. And and I know that in the developing world, that is so crucial, because the scales are tipped in the wrong balance. And so I've actually seen, and I've got testimony from young girls who were prior to the Wonder Bag coming to the community, unable to attend school because their role was to actually get the wood, get the water, get the food on, and have a meal on the table at the end of the day. And now that cooking process is being done before the young girl goes to school. And the cooking is taking place all the while. She is walking to school, she's at school, and she's walking back to school, because the cooking bag lasts up to 10 hours. It'll go beyond, but actually, it's amazing. And I've had the privilege, and I've actually done a little bit of adventure with it as well. I've taken it up. I've climbed all the way up to the summit of Mount Meru. I've climbed all the way to the summit of Kilimanjaro, cooking as we go and serving porridge that we cooked at midnight on the summit of Kilimanjaro at dawn. And that needs to be in a book somewhere, John, surely.
not another chapter. Good grief. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I'm not sure how this book might have to come out in installments of tales around the campfire of Ken and John, I think. You know what I mean? I mean, the great thing about it is, obviously, people can buy these themselves. You know what I mean? I mean, certainly from from my perspective, like I said, I don't, they're kind of £50 each. That's fair enough. I mean, we'd pay that for, any kind of thing. Maybe it's one meal if you went out or whatever. People equate that to so many coffees. Mm-hmm. I just think it's one of those things that you're able to pass on to someone else. The thought of, giving these to the community shop and to Zinfia, and then, sharing a couple with the Andrew Green Foundation, if they then used some of those to help their own communities, it'd be amazing. I mean, I gave some funding that I did some running the year before last, and unfortunately the half marathon was cancelled here, so I gave the money, donated the money anyway, and I think I supported six women to set up in their own social enterprises in the south of Haiti. £16 each. That's ridiculous. Someone to go on a course, to be able to get the support they help their own family become the breadwinner in the family, and most of them were cooking on the side of the road, offering those services. That's what they were setting up as. So what you've got here is you've got something that could actually solve that, give more time back, help people, and stuff. And I just think we look at these big acts that we have to do to help people around the world, and we talk about so much money being given by the government and stuff. Well, of course, it never gets to these people. You know,
It doesn't.
it's the
No, it
things that
doesn't.
we can do. Please, I just say to people, you know, find some good organisations like your own, you know, and Jane Holden is the other person I've interviewed today on the blog post. You know, the Andrew Green Foundation in Haiti. Very small amounts of money can make the biggest difference and allow the work that goes on to be done, because then, you know, it's about helping individuals, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. It is. And, I think, if I mean, I would say this because I've got a garage full of Wonder Bags, but actually, what people need to do is buy a Wonder Bag for themselves,
Yeah.
and subsidize one for going to such as a Haiti or a Lesotho family, because what that does is it actually, there's a warm feeling in your heart that actually, even when you're not using your Wonder Bag because you're maybe too lazy and you've just called Just Eat, you've actually, there's a good chance that somewhere else in the world, you've got a community member whose life has been transformed by nothing other than a foam-filled bag and a recipe book.
Yeah.
It's
If someone's watching this and they want one, they can drop me a message and I'll sort one out, and they can come and pick it up from the Dot Media Centre. You know, we'll change the world, Ken, one Wonder Bag at a time. and there's the T-shirt that goes with the book, I think. Yeah, cool. Listen. We've been speaking to nearly an hour now. So just final word from yourself. I mean, are you quite optimistic for what's going to happen with the world going forward? Are you an eternal optimist like myself? You know, a healthy dose of realism, obviously, but
I am. I think events in the change in personnel in the White House, the declaration last October in China for China's aim to get to carbon neutrality. That has got to kick people's butts in the right direction. Obviously, Sir David Attenborough's documentaries and witness statement. You cannot ignore such calls from such people. So I think there are some real hard things that we need to front up against, and it's completely wrong that this government is actually going ahead with a coal mine in Cumbria when it's trying to say to the rest of the world, decarbonize. We must not be hypocrites. We actually must walk the talk and be as pure as we can be. But actually, I think that there is. I'm with David Attenborough on this one. I believe that actually there is strength in the youth, and actually the more I speak to school children and the more opportunities I get to speak to young children, the more encouraged I become. Because they understand. It's worrying for them. It is. I genuinely feel that actually they are wrestling. My daughter's 18, my son's 21. And they are saying, well, actually, hey, Dad, this is in my lifetime. I'm saying, yeah. I'm saying some of the stuff that's going down, hopefully, is going to be in my lifetime too. We've got to. There is an urgency for change that actually people have yet to grasp, and that's the thing that needs to shake people. It is 1.5 degrees rise in Celsius is what people are saying would be acceptable. Well, actually, for me, that's not. We're still going to lose 80-90% of all the coral on the planet with 1.5 increase in. So if, and I don't know if you've been scuba diving, but it's beautiful. Our oceans are just extraordinary, and I don't want that to be lost. I don't want the habitat to be denuded in such a way. So we really have got to be urgent in the message and clear in the message that actually we all can be part of a solution, starting by buying a Wonder Bag.
Stop selling. You said you weren't going to be commercial. That's terrible. That's terrible. Ken, listen, it's lovely to speak to you. Obviously, thanks for taking the time. I really do appreciate it. I don't treat any of the conversations I have with any of the people I know in the UK or anywhere else around the world any differently, because it's about people that are being passionate, you know, the kind of that documentarian approach that you want to share what you know and what you've seen and what you've done, and invite people on that journey with you. And I think, you know, you're what you do is amazing, and Tina and I are absolutely delighted to support and here at the Dot Media Centre, and call you our friend, and help you as much as we can with Africa's Gift, and go on that journey. And again, if anyone's watching this and they want to get involved and they want to help, you know, contact myself or Ken. I think I've just given Charlotte your Instagram account, so I'm sure you'll get at least one new follower. And then we just take it from there, one day at a time, isn't it?
I'm sure that Instagram account I need to work on. I've got the Twitter profile's a bit more complete, but yeah,
we'll get you there. We'll get you there.
You're going to move me that direction. Awesome.
We'll take you in that direction. All the best. You take care.
Thanks, Sam. Take care. Thank you. Bye.